Good morning, defenders of truth, freedom, and children's health. Good morning, CHD. My name is Stephanie Lucrecio, and I am your host for this morning, Monday, November 14th, 2022. I want to start the show by saying that the views expressed during the show do not necessarily reflect those of Children's Health Defense. And we want to kick it off with a really great video to introduce our first guest. So I'm going to roll to the video.
My name is Steve. I run Strategic Response Partners. We're a disaster management company. A rapid response team is a highly specialized critical response team within SRP's organization. So our job is to have the best that simply deploy out for special missions that are in very high hazard areas to provide services, solutions for the community, both in saving lives and restoring the community so they can get back to business as usual as quickly as possible. We respond to everything from earthquakes, fires, hurricanes, avalanches, tornadoes, hailstorms, and explosions anywhere, anytime, at any moment in the U.S. I come across a lot of first responders, a lot of experts in the industry, and they're like, hey, I want to be a part of the SRP family. I want to be on your team. I want to be part of the team that deploys. And yes, there's a lot of people who want. There's been situations where we're ripping through a storm and one person starts to lose it because they got real close to a tornado. They were not familiar with that type of environment and they're uneasy. Pull the truck over, get out, get your Uber, go to the airport. You're no longer on the team. We're gone. He's on the side of the road with his bags. That's what it comes down to. And I'm going to call it like it is. It's like a cancer that starts to infect the body. My job is lead incident commanders, cut the cancer out and keep the team going because we have a mission and a purpose to serve. I've gone through this stuff over and over again, and people ask me, why do I do this? I see a system that's broken. I have personal friends that are on the FEMA task force. They're sitting on tarmacs for 2 days. What I hope for the future is that SRP's critical response team is going to inspire a massive change in the world, that this is how response is handled.
I am so excited to bring on this guest. So we've been talking for quite a while, and this video is just a highlight reel that speaks to the courage, expertise, and fierce dedication. Steve Slepcevic is the founder of Strategic Response Partners, which is a disaster management firm, and I am so excited to have him on this morning to talk about all things disaster preparedness. Welcome, Steve. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Every time I watch something that you send, I feel like I learn a little something each and every time. So you said in the video, I mean, when people are going out of these areas, you are literally walking into the fire, quote unquote. Can you talk to me a little bit about what your reasons were for choosing this line of work and how you cope with the enormous amounts of stress that must come with what you do every single day?
Well, I think it's just the fact of I'm always looking for how I can improve something better. I was a kid that couldn't sleep. When I would see something that didn't work the day before, I would run these scenarios over and over my head as to what could I have done better that would have increased the response time, created a better outcome. So I think a lot of it just comes from planning, seeing a system that's broken and knowing that there's a better, faster, more efficient solution. And that's just kind of how it's all been. It started as a kid, fascinated with disasters, seeing families floating down a river in makeshift boats, mattresses, some floaties, families standing in front of their home after a big, structure fire in their pajamas. And coming from a family of developers, I was like, I could fix this. Some of my friends were firefighters. They'd kick in the door, put the water out on the fire, and then they'd leave. And I was like, okay, well, what now? So I just looked at all the things that were broken and then how to make it better each and every single time. That's how it started, really.
Wow. It definitely is a fascinating line of work. And in the times that we're living in right now, with a lot of unrest erupting all over the world, there are so many things that we take for granted that in 1 second could be taken from us, be it a natural disaster, a nuclear attack, a cyber attack. When we had our first conversation, it was during the trucker convoy, and you literally fascinated me with all of the ways that you were just able to quickly spit out things that we should and need to be doing to prepare for the unexpected. So can you share some of the top things that you recommend with our viewers for things that we can be doing right now to prepare for whatever is in front of us?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, we always go into an area where it's actually we're what we call the cone of silence. The place got decimated. There are no cell phone towers. There is no food. There's no water. The infrastructure is completely blown out. So we get to operate off the grid each and every single time. And each and every single time, I'm seeing what equipment I'm bringing in, what tools I'm bringing in, what am I bringing into that area. So with how things are happening, I mean, you see the food prices jumping up in Europe. What was it, 15 to 20% increase in food just this last month. You see the diesel shortages. What is it, 25 days now that they're saying that the diesel, jet fuel, heating oil, that's all that stuff's being taken out. And there's going to be a shortage, which is going to create a shortage on food, supply chain issues, all that type of stuff. So I always get the best way to be prepared is to think of like more and more being able to be self-sustaining, self-sufficient. So if you're able to grow a garden, have communications. Communications is one very huge thing. All our guys everyone in my family, actually, my wife, my kids, all have satellite phones. People may think that's an overkill, but I'm in areas all the time where the the cell phone systems are down, and your communication is absolutely critical. But it's not enough to have a satellite phone. You got to have where you check it every 3 months. Open it up, make your call to each different sat phone, make sure all your phone numbers are plugged in for everybody that you need to get a hold of. I have it to where it's all my vendors are in: my fuel, my food, my shelter, my mobile showers, mobile bathrooms. All the different vendors we have are all in my sat phones. I have 2 sat phones. That's 1 sat phone. I have a backup sat phone. All of that is in a Faraday bag. So if there is an EMP strike, my electronics aren't impacted. I carry that in a go bag, a backpack that I carry with me everywhere. And then I also carry a bivy stick, which is a very simple, quick notification. It's also on a satellite system. So I have both Amersat and Iridium. So I'm running on 2 different satellite systems. But those are one of the big things, obviously, is communication. And then it gets into obviously having fuel so you can get to and where you need to go. And that's where I keep a fuel cell at my house. You can keep them in 5-gallon drums, or you can keep them in a 50-gallon drum. Or if you want to be really expensive, you can get a 500-gallon fuel cell in your backyard. But you got to make sure you got permits to be able to do that. So
one of the things that you talked about in one of the initial videos that you sent was having these disaster planning meetings with your family and friends, like being able to discuss, what does it look like if there's a disaster? Where are we meeting? What's the plan? Do we have a navigation strategy around the traffic? And you talk about this 4-hour time period from when something happens to being able to execute the strategy. So can you talk first about this planning meeting that you have with your family? And second, for a lot of viewers, this whole idea of disaster preparedness is a very heavy topic, and people almost don't want to go there because they don't want to live their lives worrying and stressing. And you speak to that in some of the videos. So how do you balance the idea of knowing that you're in this industry, you know that disasters happen, but you don't allow it to run your life? How do you strike that balance?
There's like this mental switch that when people start talking about disasters, it's almost like planning for a funeral. So people have a tendency to want to turn that part of their brain off. They don't want to have a conversation about that. But what happens is that if you don't have those type of conversations now and actually put a plan for your family in place, you go into a state of what we call a fog of war. You go into a panic type situation rather than I've already done this drill. This feels familiar. And then you just handle the mechanics, right? So if there was an EMP strike, a solar flare, a sleeper cell that's plugged into the electrical grid, there's 18 critical infrastructures in the United States. 17 of those run off the electrical grid. If the electrical grid goes down, just watching how the response was in Florida, that's to one small region on a coastline. If the power grid goes off in a long area, there's not enough electrical supplies to actually be able to make that repair to that infrastructure for up to a year and possibly 2 years, because a lot of these parts come from South Korea, from Taiwan, and other areas where there's already a supply shortage of those components. If the system is down for 1 year, 90% of Americans will be dead according to the business continuity planners that work in this specific space. This isn't my numbers. This is the expert numbers. So for me, when I see those type of things and I see all the writing on the wall of what's going on in the world today, my job is to make sure that my family has a very clear plan that if my daughter is in college and the system goes out, if she can't get hold of me on a sat phone for whatever reason, there's a redundancy thing in plan. Here's the place and here's where you want to travel and here's the meetup point. Here's the board that you're going to put your notes on as to where you check in every 4 hours. When that grid goes down, you have 4 hours. 4 hours is really your critical window in any area before there's complete and total anarchy. There will be a run on the food, right? There'll be a run on everything. It'll be absolute mass chaos. So having a plan to where your family's going to be in a safe location, where you're going to be able to get whatever last minute things you need, be it medication, fresh produce, being able to make sure that if the power grid goes off, how are you pulling what food out of the fridge? What are you going to be cooking first? Making sure that all your tubs, all your bathrooms, everything is, all your water sources are filled to the capacity. I mean, the list goes on. The list goes on. And for me, I always say it's got to be to where the communication is nonverbal. Consider making those plans to where you can't communicate. So I've told my son, listen, if you see the power goes out, your cell phone's not working, you look outside the window and there's not vehicles moving, you get up out of your classroom and you walk this route home. I'll come find you, but this is the way I want you to walk home. If I don't come get you, just keep going home until you get home. Because then I know everyone's in a safe location. And because we respond to a lot of critical infrastructure in the United States, I need to know that my family's taken care of, because unless they're taken care of, which is my circle of concern, I am no good and I can't respond to customers and clients that are expecting us to show up and be able to bring in the backup generators, the fuel power, the armed security, the paramedics, all the things that they need to keep that facility up and operational. So family first. I always say family first before you ever think about community.
I love that. Family first has definitely been a motto that I've lived by as well. We're getting some live questions in the comments in the chat. And I'm wondering, satellite phones, two things. Where can you get them? How expensive are they? And wouldn't they be impacted by an attack on the electrical grid?
Well, first and foremost, yes, they would be impacted if there was electrical, like a solar flare, or if there was an EMP strike or something. You know, I mean, I wouldn't put nothing past this new world we live in, right? Because if somebody told me that all the airplanes were going to be grounded, the entire world was going to come to a standstill over a virus, I would have told you that's impossible. That would never happen. So I always say prepare for the impossible. So yes, that's why it's critical to have your satellite phone in a Faraday bag. The Faraday bag it's a sleeve and it goes around. It's there to interrupt and break down any type of electrical surges that might actually fry the electronics or the components to your phone. A great place to get it, like for us, there's two main places. One's in Shelter Island that provides a lot of stuff. Shelter Island, which is in San Diego. And then the other locations is in Sarasota, Florida. And they've always supplied sat phones and bivy sticks for us the past 16 years. And that's the satellite phone store. Or you can go to sat123.com or 123sat.com. Not sure, I forget what it is, but I also have it linked on our website if you want to share it with your audience. A disaster planning page that has a lot of the different resources there on that. The bivy stick is also very beneficial. It works through a text messaging system through through the satellite systems. So if everyone's using the sat phones, the bivy stick, the text messages and coordination, you can have your a secondary smartphone with your bivy stick in a Faraday sleeve, and then pull it up, power that stuff up, and then be able to communicate that way as well. I use that as a backup system. And during Hurricane Ian, it was super effective on communicating with our team.
What's a bivy stick?
A bivy stick is a small little, here, I'll show you actually.
Okay. I love it. Show and tell live on Good Morning CHD.
This is my bag.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'll be on the spot for this thing, but here we go, right? So this is a Faraday bag, right? This is a Faraday bag. And so in here, let's see this one here. Okay, this one here has my sat phone. This is the Amersat sat phone right here. Okay, so this is one sleeve. And then on the other side of the bag here, I have my other sleeve, my other Faraday sleeve. And then if you see, there's my backup phone. And then this is the bivy stick. So it's a small little component. You can see it. And then it has a little SOS button on the bottom that'll send out your GPS coordinates of exactly where you're at. Charge lasts real long. And it's a great simple system that it pairs with your phone. So if this phone's on airplane mode, I'll sync these two up, and then I could communicate text messaging through here, and it goes through satellite. As long as I have a clear line of sight to the sky, this thing works fabulous. Works really well. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea what those simple things are. I carry a medic kit in my backpack, and then I have my different prescriptions that I carry, in case there's certain things that you want to stay off and not have to deal with, my ivermectin, if I'm allowed to say that, my Z-Pack, and just the different meds that you may need if you have an injury out in the desert or out in a hurricane zone.
And another question that's coming is, would a landline work in a situation like this, where there's some sort of interruption?
If you can find a landline, I mean, I don't know. I don't know when the last time I saw a phone box or a phone booth out in an area that, And what's interesting about landlines is that even the landlines go to a switch gear that then is going through a software. So true landlines, like back in the old days, I don't think that actually exists anymore.
Yeah, we're very dependent on the internet and Wi-Fi, and we're seeing a lot of that stuff go on. So I actually recently got my landline reactivated. So it's something it's up and running, which is not what I could say a year ago. So I don't know if it'll work, but I guess not depending on the cell phones is what we're all looking to do at this point.
Here's the thing. Because I live off the grid, in and out of those zones, I'm forced to switch gears up here mentally, right? So I'm already programmed to know how to do that. The challenging thing is that people, if I said to somebody, "Hey, I need you to turn all your electronics off for a month and see how you fare in life right now," most people will be like, "That's impossible. There's no way I could do that, right? My whole world revolves around computers, my iPhone, my iWatch, my schedules." This is the world I live in. But if you really wanted to create a most comprehensive plan, you would do it like that, to sit there and say, let me try it for a day. Let me try it for 2 days. Let me try it for 3 days. I'm not saying people to take 30 days off of everything, but it would really kind of mentally, if you can kind of think that way, it'd really prepare you for if everything was down, how your family would operate. Because most people in those times get injured because of not knowing and not being tethered to somebody in constant communication. And I think that's where the anxiety and the panic and the injuries happen in those type of scenarios, is people are not prepared.
Agreed. And I also think about the reliance. I'm personally very guilty of this, relying on navigation systems, Waze, Google Maps, those things to get you from point A to point B. Like I honestly think about if there was a time in the world where I needed to read from a map, it would be challenging. So I've started to get to the point where it's like getting those road atlases and going back to basics, because you don't realize how dependent you are. Like you said, if this phone was taken from you and you had no communication traditionally, you don't have a phone book anymore, you don't have the maps, the things of the past before this heavy reliance on technology began, which is a way that they sort of entrap us into this autopilot mode that we all currently live on, just taking for granted that all these conveniences will always be there.
Yeah, I mean, everything right now in the whole world is about control. I mean, control and everything. Control the food, control the money, control the fuel, control how you communicate, control what you communicate. I mean, everything is about control. The maps are good. They're great. I also, like I was sharing with you, on the phone that you keep in the Faraday bag, Maps.me. You could go to an app called Maps.me, which you could download on your phone, which if you don't have GPS or you don't have cell service, you can use it. Google Maps allows you to do the same thing. So those are also really good things to do, is to download those maps in your area, so that if for any reason your system goes down, you can still navigate off your phone as long as you've had it in the Faraday sleep, you know?
Yeah, agreed. And you talk about control, and based on some of the things that I've seen, we need some control at some of the borders. It was just going to segment me into the next thing that we're going to talk about, because you've spent a lot of time assisting at our borders. And we're going to roll a video in just a second, but I just want to get a high level overview from you on some of the things that you're seeing at the borders that has you so concerned.
The things that have me really concerned is the child traffickers, the sex trafficking that's going on. What people don't realize is that the drug cartels can go and sell fentanyl pills. They have a customer, they sell it once. If they bring a child over, or they bring a young girl over, they get to sell her over and over and over and over again. And that to them is a very, very lucrative business, and it is being completely ignored. There's something like 400,000 children go missing every year in the United States. I think the numbers when they looked at it last was closer to 600,000. I don't know where these kids are going. And the challenge that I have is when you have these kids that are being smuggled across the border, they're undocumented. They're not even in the system. And they're evading border patrol, they're evading border sheriffs, and the amount of what they call getaways is astronomical. That is people that have hit the cameras, and while I'm standing there with border patrol, he's like, yeah, there's another hit, there's another hit, there's another hit, there's another hit. And they're completely taxed to where they can't get to all those people that are coming across and hitting the different cameras that they have throughout the desert. And I run across these children, and some of them that we've been successful in intercepting, and I see all the ones that we don't intercept, and I always wonder. It pains me to think, where are those kids today? Why isn't the world doing more about this?
I agree. And honestly, watching the trailer for Border Battle, which is a documentary that you were involved in, it really does open your eyes to all the atrocities that are happening at the border. We're going to roll this video, and I just want to start by saying that this video contains graphic content, so viewer discretion is advised. If you have children in the room, it might be a good idea to take them out of the room for the next 2 minutes or so.
Describe the cartel, pure evil. They have zero regard for human life, and they're about as evil as they come.
They're not just a transnational crime organization. They're well beyond that. Now they have sophisticated weapons. They have tanks. They have drones. They're dropping explosives. We've never seen this before in the history of the country.
Fentanyl is an extremely powerful drug. It is 100 times more powerful than morphine, and 50 times more powerful than heroin. That would be like 3 grains of salt. If you were to have that much fentanyl, it would kill you.
I just think of every mom that is going to spend the rest of their lives without somebody they love.
It's not a red or a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue.
So tell us a little bit about Border Battle, what people can expect to see in it, why they should view it, and how they can view it.
Well, it really kind of takes you behind the scenes of really what's going on at the border. We've done multiple runs out there, bringing our highly trained drone teams running night ops. And in those runs, including security to private security to support both the drone team and work alongside the border sheriff. So it started really kind of just seeing a need of these the border sheriffs getting completely overwhelmed, and then it really kind of opened up to seeing really what the bad actors and what people were, what was coming across those borders, and what a major impact that's going to have in every city in the United States. So a lot of people are just kind of complacent, and they're ignoring the fact that this thing is actually coming down our hallways in our cities. A good friend of mine is LA County Sheriff Captain, and he said that the amount of new recruits that the local Hispanic gangs have actually gotten has now gotten into, you know, underground casinos, prostitution, gun running, running all types of drugs, cocaine, fentanyl, and it's just exploded to where they're not even able to really truly get a handle on it. And that's not just there. That's showing up in Missouri. That's showing up in New York. That's showing up in a lot of areas that before they didn't see those type of crime statistics. In border battles, you're going to see a lot of the stuff that's from our body cams, from our drones, from our border sheriffs, and exactly what's going on. The kids that are coming across, the drugs that are coming across. And if you pay attention, there's a massive war that's going on along our borders right now on the Mexico side, and it's spilling over onto the American side to where different border patrol have been killed. Border sheriffs have been shot at. We've had some really insane close calls of just being out there because they don't want us anywhere near out there or exposing them for it. Not to mention that the people that own the ranches and the homeowners along the border areas are really afraid to speak out for the fact of retaliation. That if they were to speak out and they were to be on film or camera, they would be targeted. Many of them have been targeted, so they learn just to keep quiet. And that is how the cartels work. So, and then they continue to gain ground. And so people eventually, we're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, and one of the things that was interesting to me is you talk about how a lot of the families that you're seeing come through the border, that you're seeing on the news, those families are actually distractions for Border Patrol agents who are acting as, quote, Ubers, from what you're saying in the documentary, for the real deal of what's coming in. So can you talk a little bit about that and some of the things that you're doing with drones to sort of track and help the border agents?
Yeah, so many times we've had where there's large groups coming through that are, you know, the migrants are pushing through one area, and a lot of the cartels are using those groups to push them through. And then once the border patrol is overwhelmed, they have scouts on the mountain. So the scouts are actually on American soil, looking down, watching the border patrol trucks, having to go to an area to deal with about 100 plus, 200 plus migrants coming through a specific crossing. Once they're overwhelmed, off to another section of the valley, they're moving all the drugs and fentanyl and all the other stuff that, from the kids that they're moving through those areas. They're moving those through those areas when the border patrol is overwhelmed and taxed on one specific area. So we've been very successful because we don't run any specific pattern. As a private contractor, we don't have a time that we check in. There's not a lunch break. There's not a shift change. We're out there tracking them, running our night ops, running our thermal cameras, completely blacked out. They have no idea that these drones are up in the sky. And they're very highly sophisticated drones. So in those areas where they're coming across, we're tracking them. And then we're giving Border Patrol, especially the BORTAC unit and border sheriffs, the coordinates of where these bad actors are going through, and tracking them and giving them exact coordinates, exact comms, so that they're able to get right to those zones, surround them, and then light it up, bring the drone down, put the strobe lights on, put all the, and then just arrest them in groups. But, you know, we've seen them where they're dropping drugs, where they're trying to swim back across the border with the kids that they smuggled across. We've intercepted where coyotes have brought 2 kids across and the kids were kidnapped. We had one girl that was about 11 years old. She was bleeding and found out she was raped multiple times based on the different strands of DNA that they found in her. But yeah, you see this type of stuff and it's ugly. It's really, really ugly. So anyway, go ahead.
I'm with you right now. I feel you. And I honestly, my question is, how do you see those things and continue to be brave and to go back and to not let it take over every cell in your body, which I can't even imagine. How do you cope mentally with all the things that you're seeing?
Man, I'm telling you, it's a spiritual thing. Everything's spiritual for me. Um, it's in prayer. I feel that, you know, in the process, I always say where spirit would have me go, right? And I just trust God has a reason for us to be in those moments, to show up in those moments, to change the trajectory of an individual, an outcome that maybe that day would have looked very different from them, but somebody showed up. It just answer the call. That's really it. So I didn't mean to get emotional here, but I think that just for me, it's very spiritual. It's just I cleanse it. I take it to prayer in prayer. I got a very strong wife, an amazing woman who keeps me grounded, and I show up time and time again, knowing that whether it's a hurricane and or we're on a tornado chase and we're getting ahead of the tornado to warn people to get out of the way, or we're on the back end of it providing some basic life support systems until EMS can come pick them up. If it's a border area, intercepting those traffickers and getting that child or that kid or that woman separated from the cartels, the coyotes, and in safe custody. I've done my job. I mean, I have a small shrine that have different memorabilia from those operations at the border, even from little IDs from little kids that we've gotten. And I simply ask people to pray for them. I don't know where their life is or where they're going to go. We don't keep in touch with them once they move on. And I just think that if more and more people actually just, there's a lot of ways people can serve and get involved, and many times it's simply spreading the word. And if you're going to go down to the border for any reason, I always say go under the direction of the border sheriffs. You do not want to be down there unsupervised. There's a lot of ways you can volunteer, but I always say do it under the direction of the border sheriffs, and they'll guide you and instruct you what you can and cannot do, so you're not part of the problem. You're part of a solution.
I love that. And I love how deeply rooted in your faith you are. I think that it's the only way to navigate through the uncertain times and to also navigate through the things that you're seeing and witnessing every single day, because it can weigh heavy on your soul and your spirit and just in general and how you operate from day to day. So I'm so thankful for your service. I'm so thankful for everything that you do every single day to prepare not only yourselves, but other people for all the things that are happening, and to share your wisdom and your knowledge with us this morning. Where can people go to find you, to follow you, and to learn more about your work and how to further prepare for all the things that may show up in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I put a brief video on our website. It's srp24.com/prepare. There's like a 20-minute video at the bottom, and there's some resources that are good resources. I don't make any money off of it. It's always about being in service on the personal side, for the fact that this is preparing critical infrastructure, the hospitals, the ports, the airports, municipalities, those type of projects, and then obviously handling the response and the recovery for them. But I tell you, I couldn't do this if it wasn't for my amazing team, and also for some of our strategic partners that have been phenomenal. That when we pick up the phone or that bell rings and I'm like, hey, we have a special op that we're being called into, whether it was when we took some independent journalists into Ukraine, or we're working the border, or we're responding to a tornado or a hurricane. These people that are members that are part of our team are just incredible, and I owe so much to their families, because their wives hold down the fort. Their wives and their husbands hold down the fort. So when these guys actually deploy, they have their head in the game, 100% outward focused, to be in service moment to moment. And to me, honestly, I look forward to the next event. Not that I look forward to the next event. Those events are going to come, and they're not something that I control. All I can control is how I show up and how I show up for those around me. And I think that's the greatest greatest form of love is simply to be in service. So I'm grateful to be chosen for as long as I can to be in service to people outside of myself.
We're grateful to you, and we're grateful to your warrior mom wife, Tracy, who I had on my show last week. I mean, the two of you are just phenomenal human beings, and I'm so thankful for everything that you do. We're definitely going to have you come back for more information, for updates on the border, and also to continue the conversation of emergency preparedness. I so enjoyed having you on, and thank you again so much for everything that you do.
Well, Stephanie, thank you for putting the word out there and sharing the information. So yeah, thank you, and thank you to Children's Health Defense for being on the front line and not backing down. So
we will not back down, and I'm so happy we got to meet in Knoxville. Thank you for waking up with me this morning. I know it's early in your neck of the woods, so thanks again.
It's all good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.